Hello people, lockdown day, need a damn haircut and a shave, but what the hell, lockdown day, I don't know, it's just a day. Anyway, a week from Easter. Right, so anyway, welcome to this very latest episode in Sandy the Land. Losing the fucking plot here and I'm not even started drinking yet. Sandy the Landy. Hope you enjoyed the last episode. Managed to get all the loom and everything in place. I'm waiting for an order to come in from Vehicle Wiring Products. They sent it to the wrong address. These things happen, you know. They've agreed to duplicate the order and send it here. So at least I can get the loom finished. And when the loom's finished, and I finish off the brake lines, then I can get this thing out the barn. Oh yes. Enjoy this episode anyway. I'd like to think they're all good. I don't really hide anything. Your feedback on content that you might like to see or might not like to see would be welcome. I've hit my thousandth subscriber. Thank you very much for that, chaps. You know, I really do appreciate it. I look through my analytics, the YouTube analytics, and it appears that those that subscribe to the channel make up 45% of the people that view the content. So it could well be that people are watching it more than once. You sad bastards. Or there's lots of people watching on their telly and so forth who don't bother subscribing. So if you can, please subscribe, because it motivates me to do more of this. But I'm well motivated at the moment anyway, despite the lockdown, despite, you know, all the joy of lockdown. Stay safe, stay at home. Richard the Stag's told you to stay at home. I can't stay at home. I have to stay at my dad's home, because this is where I happened to be when Boris told us to stay at home. So stay at home. There we are, end of lecture. That was it. Let's have some fun now. Time to get cracking with this thing. I've had all bloody week on this, and all I've really done is, well, okay, I've done all the front end of it. So back wheels are off. Looking at the back axles. It's all looking very clean and tidy in here. Very nice. This side, okay, drum's moving. The previous owner did mention to me it had quite new springs on the back, and also he'd had the back brakes done. This is encouraging. Fuel tank looks good. Doesn't smell of fuel back here, so test it with a match later on. No, we don't do things like that. The exhaust has got a hole in it. That's a shame. Never mind. We can get another exhaust system. This has been sitting around for quite a long time, unfortunately, so it's going to need an exhaust. And on this side, I've had a bit of sweep up on the floor as well. Oh, that's never a good thing to see, is it? Oh. Right, let's get this drum off. What are these brake pipes like? There's the chassis line, which is good news, because I can replace that end to end. I need to get the light under here, really. Again, all looking really nice and clean and tidy down here. There's a bit of shit on the rear cross member. I'll check that out in a minute, just make sure he's all nice and solid. Get Mr. Tappy out. Yeah, there's a fair amount of room under here, isn't there? We wasted a lot of space on these cars, because imagine if you were to box this section in like it would be on a Land Rover, you'd get about another 2 or 3 cubic feet in front of each of the rear wheels. Because when you look inside, well, you can't see inside actually because it's all full of shit. But effectively, what you've got is this area downwards is just not used. And behind the wheel as well, this side we've got the fuel filler. Oh, dear. Right, okay. So the objective today was to get that chassis line replaced and to bleed the back brakes through. But I'm going to have to get this drum off first of all. We might still achieve it. I think pretty sure I've got all the parts to do this, but you can see that is moist, to use a word which probably isn't used enough these days. Damp. So axle as well, this is interesting. Not spring plates, because they're for bump stops. The bump stop's missing on this side by the looks of things. But it's got a locator plate for a Telescopic spring. Damper, sorry. What are you talking about, Richard? Telescopic damper. So where is the fucking damper on here then? Have we got no dampers on the back of this? That's interesting. I thought these things would have dampers on the back. No. No, we don't need dampers on a series Land Rover. We've got dampers on the front, no dampers on the back. I'll check into that. Again, you Series 3 boys, you 109 chaps will be shouting at me through your computer screens in lockdown that, yes, of course they don't have dampers on the back, blah-de-blah-de-blah. Looks like the option is there, though, to fit dampers. How strange. Right, I'll double-check that. Exhaust needs to come off, though. New exhaust, which is a pain, but never mind. Might as well replace it front to back. It's a pain because I've actually just bolted it up here. Never mind, shit happens. Right, let's get this drum off. What are we going to need? An impact wrench box, blah 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 blah. Oh, I've got the parts diagram here, let's have a look. So there you go. Front and rear dampers. Rear 88, 109 V8 and 109 1 ton are the only damper options for rear. Well, that's what the parts manual says anyway. Interesting. Never mind, didn't need them obviously. Bounces around. Might make it a bit more comfortable if you did put them on it. I don't know, I really don't. Comments below. Time is not lost on this. Stranger, huh? Well, I say strange, but nothing's strange in Land Rover circles. It really isn't. Just 1 second. Right, updates on the bulkhead. I've ordered the paint, so I've ordered a synthetic enamel, which I can probably brush paint on, that's as close to this shade as I possibly can, so I'll just overpaint the outside areas. I might even spray paint it, there you go, we'll see. I'm not taking the screen out again though, so it might just be brush painted. But it's going to be no worse, no better than what it's got currently. I've also ordered it, rather than a full gloss, I've ordered it with a 60% shine on it. So you can see there is a shine to this. I didn't want a satin finish. If this got cleaned back, it probably would have some form of a shine to it. You can see there's a reflection of my boot down there, just about. So yeah, that's on its way. Right, let's more getting on with it. I've just noticed when I've jacked that up, I didn't actually. How much room have we got above the top? A lot. It's enough. This is going to be my new parts washer, by the way. I shall let you know how that project goes, but I need to get this finished first of all. Right, enough gabbing on, let's fucking get on with it. Right, just undoing the drive plate on the back end of this thing. So, cap was a bastard to get off. It was a bit seized on. Secondly, well, probably more importantly, it's held on with a circlip, similar to Range Rover front hubs. Held on with a circlip, but there is nothing, nothing to sort the end float out. So I don't know if these things are supposed to just bang backwards and forwards, or whether they're supposed to be shimmed out, or there's a spacer missing. I mean, it's quite a lot of movement. You can see the groove there where the circlip goes. And that's what I'm able to do, just putting it in and out of my thumbnail. I don't know. Again, another thing I have to look up in the parts manual. Just take a picture of it to remind me. There you go. Phones are very useful when it comes to restoration. They really are. There's another big patch over there. That looks like it might have been patched at some point, doesn't it? Right, okay, so what should be up here is there should be a spring hanger. That should be a big old fabric strap that goes down around the spring. And that's missing as well. Get hold of those, that's not really a problem. Fuel line over there. Fuel line's good. Brake line we're going to replace. Looks like the nose of the differential's leaking, which is always a good indication. Means it's got oil in it. I'm not going to fuck around with that. Land Rovers are supposed to leak oil. Doesn't matter how hard you try and stop them, they leak oil. Now these brake lines, I suspect they're copper. I'll see. If they're copper, I won't bother replacing. I will replace this flexi because that looks tired, and it is tired. I've replaced all the other flexes, so I might as well replace that one. It makes sense on a car where you just don't know. The problem with these things can be they may bulge when you're not expecting. So when you press your foot on the brake pedal, rather than passing the fluid straight through and into the cylinders, the wheel cylinders here, they could just bulge here, which is taking brake effort away. Or alternatively, they can collapse internally. So what then happens when brake lines collapse internally is you press the brake pedal, there's a whole load of force comes down from the master cylinder, goes all this way down here, is able to force its way past the restriction. I'll put the brakes on, okay? And then, of course, when you let go of the brake pedal, the fluid is not free to travel back up the pipe because there's nowhere near amount of force here to push the fluid back. There's a vacuum, obviously, at the brake master end, and there's the springs at this end, but there's nowhere near the same level of force. So what can then happen is you end up with the brakes being locked on or binding. If you ever have locked on or binding brakes, one of the first things you do is check the flexi. It's the most likely cause because they're made out of rubber. For now. Right, okay, I'm going to get this drive plate off. Right, that's gone and done it. Got the stub axle off as well because I want to investigate that. However, there's not a huge amount of oil in this diff. So when I pull the stub axle off, I'd expect this thing to be largely populated, and it isn't, because obviously it's all leaked into this drum on this side. I pulled out the chassis brake line. It's clipped onto a chassis in a couple of places, and then I've relocated the whole damn lot to the bench, which is the easiest way of doing it. So yeah, there's quite a lot of oil in there. Give that a good clean out in a minute. The inside surface of the drum is like a scored record. It's not the best. That really has been run very, very, very tight on shoes in the past, isn't it? It's the first thing I found on this car that's actually not beautifully maintained. The shoes, yeah, those shoes would not have been doing anything at all. And they are relatively new as well. So what's actually happened here is the seal on the seal on the back of the hub has failed. So these hubs are designed to be lubricated with the axle oil. And because the seal on the back, that fella there, has failed quite dramatically, then it's filled up the back plate here and subsequently just coated everything. Now, the reason I got the stub axle off is because more often than not, the reason the seal fails is because of contaminant or rust or something along this top edge here. As you can see, it's a bit of a groove in there, so I'm going to give that a bit of a clean up and see if that's salvageable. The other thing I do, never try and undo these bloody unions on the car. If you're going to replace all the brake lines, and this one was steel, so the axle lines are both steel, and the chassis line, which I pulled out as well, was copper. I'll just replace it as a matter of course. It had a joiner in the middle of it for some reason. I'm not entirely sure I know why. There you go. It's all copper from one end to the other. I just make life easier for myself. That one I actually undid, but normally I just tend to cut them. So I get the approximate length, and I've salvaged pardon me, hickety-uppity, I've salvaged the nuts on the flexi. This flexi had definitely seen better days. Okay, there's a bit of underseal and stuff on it, but when I squeezed it just now, I was getting cracking and crazy on it. And you can see here that it's got an inner and an outer kind of section, and the inner section on these older pipes is kind of prone. Probably see it a bit better on this. There we are. You can see the inner and the outer section there. You can see how that might get bunged up. In fact, I think that might be bunged up. I reckon if I got that off there, that inner will have closed up. Right, cup of tea. And it really is going to be a cup of tea because it's only, oh, good grief, 25 to 1. It's never too early for a whiskey, surely. No, I'm going to have a cup of tea. Actually, it might be even a coffee. And then I'm going to clean this lot up and reassemble it, put all the brake lines and everything back on, rebuild the brake back plate up on the bench, check I've got the seal, but if necessary I can get all the brake back plate and everything back in place. I won't be able to bleed the brakes because I need the drum on for that, and in order to put the drum on I need the hub on, and I'm not putting the hub on until I know I've got the seal And I might need a stub axle as well. But this drum ain't beautiful, is it? Really is not. Having a scratch. Right. Let's have a look at this lot. So this is the driver's side stub axle, which I've cleaned up. I've actually wedged the... Let me chisel here. I wedged the hub seal on it because I wasn't sure what the actual issue was. Hub seal seems to be relatively recent. Okay, there's some damage to it because I had to lever it out. But it's compliant, it moves, it shifts, the spring is still in it. Okay, key things we need to look for here. There's no obvious sign of damage apart from that bit there, which is where I kind of used the lever against it. There's no nicks or anything out of it. So we either assume, what are we left with based on that information that we've got here? Because we need to find out why it failed, aside from the fact it's an old Land Rover. Because the seal would appear to, or would appear to be in good shape. It's got the right part number, RTC 3510. It's on the top there, you can just about see that. And it's got these markings down here, 598579. It's not a date stamp, is it? I wouldn't have thought so. It wouldn't still be compliant. No, it can't possibly be. Anyway, so then we divert our attentions to this. Now, there is some ridging around the outside of it. And I can only assume, because I can feel it with my fingernail here, this surface here, I can only assume that what's happened is because it started to rust and corrode there, although the seal doesn't sit that far down, the worst it's going to sit is that far in, which is why I wedged it on there. So about halfway down, get him off again, pause. Right, so if we then look, and it more or less corresponds with this wear mark here, and I think it's that that's caused the problem here. Now, this style of stub axle, I believe, is the earlier type, where you can basically drill through here and get this outer sleeve off. It's not the later type, which are kind of fixed on. This is the seal off the other side, off the passenger side, because I decided to pull that apart anyway, just to double check. It's showing signs of leaking. Nothing particularly serious. I mean, it certainly hasn't gone. There's evidence that it has gone in the past, but certainly none of this crap round here is anything recent. This is the passenger side hub itself. The driver's side bearings and the passenger side bearings are inside that box there. Bearing seats themselves are in good order. They've certainly got life left in them. They appear to be okay. What else have we done here? So the reason I took this apart, really, just to double check the hub seal, but also because I'm going to need to change the brake shoes on this side, and I may well change the wheel cylinder as well. Because despite the promise that these brakes were refurbed recently, I don't know for fact. Now, when I look, these are the bits I've been cleaning. This is all the driver's side crap. It's all been gunked off. Right, now, look at these seals around the outside of the brake master. They're not very good dust seals, are they? Still quite early as well. Again, the hub on this side. The bearing seats are looking good. Got lots of life left in those. So their bearings will be going back in. Careful to match those up. This drum, it's an 11-inch drum, is really not the best. Sorry, that's my phone case flapping around there. Really not the best. I mean, yes, if that looks like the surface of a 78 record, you're not wrong. Okay, so I'm going to have to look at either getting those skimmed or buy new drums. The drum for the other side, it's all right. Let's grab Mr. Torch on the way past, because we're in the back of the barn now. So this is the passenger side drum. Yeah, that's serviceable. Nothing wrong with that one. So that drum's all right. I mean, again, there's no moisture inside this drum either. So it's a passenger side drum. So as far as I'm concerned, the hub seal had not failed on this side, but it probably wasn't that long. So when we look at the seat that the hub seal goes onto, does it look any different? So this is the problem, you see. You end up with swarf and shit. You see the swarf in the back there? Glinting away. Where the fuck's that come from? I don't know where that's come from. Oh, it's a dead spider. Hello, dead spider. Thing is, do I take this back plate off and fix it on the bench? It's an awful lot easier to fix them on the bench. And I've got to change the brake line anyway. Is this brake line? I think this is steel as well. No, this is copper. So they replaced one of them, but not the other. Weird, isn't it? Anyway, I might as well replace this one as well with conifer, because I chopped the end off it anyway. So that's it really, that's all I've got to report. The other thing is I can't put the other side back together again because I haven't got the stub axle to axle casing gasket. So the gasket that goes inside this fella. And it really needs a gasket. In fact, there's a lump of the old gasket up there. Take that out in a minute. So I'm going to go and see if I can get these rings. If I can, I'll drill this off. You just drill a hole through it. I mean, there's two ways you can do it. Either mount it and drill that way, or drill down that way and bang it with a cold chisel, and they split. They release their grip quite easily. As you can see though, the seal did go on there. It's quite a snug fit. So I don't know why it leaked oil. Replace the seals. Replace the stub axles. Now I've only got all makes seals. I like to use the Cortico ones if I can. The latest style of stub axle, you can put a double lip seal on, but I don't think the double lip seal fits on these because I don't think, because of the nature of this top lip here, I don't think you can get the lip past it. Anyway, I'll give this a clean up as well while I'm here. Just wants a little going over in the parts cleaner. And then I can start putting things back together again, so I can reassemble the passenger side, get that all done. But I'm going to need a gasket for the driver's side, and I'm also going to need either a drum or a skim to the drum. Oh, the joy of it. Not entirely convinced that this axle is original to this car. Now, why was I thinking that just now? Oh yeah, there's no axle strap on this side at all. I don't know why. There's the remains of an axle strap on the other side which someone's just chopped through. So the axle strap is ready to stop the axle overextending. It's not likely to be fucking... I mean, you'd have to get some serious air, wouldn't you, to overextend the axle. And on a long wheelbase, it's unlikely to happen, I guess. Whether I put the straps back on or not, I don't know. Again, comments on a postcard from you serious chaps. It all looks really good under here. Where's Mr. Torch gone? Left him over here. It does all look really nice under here. Clean, tidy, a little bit muddy. Nothing particularly serious. It's good. Nice motor. Right. And these are the springs that are supposed to be new. Or they were new. The owner told me, the previous owner told me, oh yeah, new springs went on it. He thinks. They could be new, I don't know. I don't know where they came from. Well, how many leaves have we got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 leaf. 8 leaf, including that little one down there. So there we are, you can count them. Quite a beefy old spring now, isn't it? Big fella. Not pissing around. Are they 1 ton springs? I don't know. I don't know what type of axle this is because I know these things should have Salisbury axles on the back. So again, someone can enlighten me on that. I don't really know my series Land Rovers as well as I know my Range Rovers. But I'm learning, as are you. Right. I think I will take this back plate off because it's a lot easier working with it on the bench. Let me. So if I look at this one over here, what you effectively do is you get, once the wheel cylinder's in place, you get your shoes roughly where they want them to go with the springs on. stretch them over the bottom and then stretch them over the top. I just use a big jemmy in between that and the shoe and the top edge of the sleeve and the shoe. Both the cam kind of shoe, whatever it is, tensioners, they both work fine on this back plate. Yeah, right, let's do something now. This is the driver's side back plate. I'm going to be replacing this sleeve. This is the sleeve with the split balls on it. I don't know if that's been araldite in or if it has just completely lost its thread. I know these sleeves, they're not steel. Let me just pause for a second. The ferrule is steel. And the cylinder is alloy. Have you ever seen an alloy component strip a steel thread? It might be a first for me. I've seen it the other way round. I've seen an alloy thread come out of a housing, but I've never seen that. Anyway, it's coming off. So another bodge on the poor old Duchess. Right, okay, just the cylinder's actually, the reason I had to get that out, by the way, is because I don't think the cylinder comes out with the brake ferrule attached. And it was a devil's own job to get that to shift, I tell you. Impact socket and giving it some beans with a hammer and a wrench. Right, okay, let's get him out. I'm not going to bother too much about that. That's going to go straight in the scrap bin. It was mentioned in the previous video, but it's not a bad idea as well. When you get new wheel cylinders, first of all, be aware they're handed. So get the one that is the same orientation as the one you've just taken off. And secondly, just peel back the rubber for now. Make sure that the spring is in the middle. And also the seal is the right way around. And that bits are in there. And also just check it inside for any alien bodies, foreign matter, so forth. The other thing I tend to do, I've just taken the what's his name out of here, is check that I've got the right ferrule for it. So in this particular case, it's a UNF fitting. I'll just take it out of the T-piece. I've recovered all of the bits out of the T-piece that sits on top of the back axle. And in this particular case, that fits in there. Beautiful. Okay. That's that. The last thing I tend to do is to make sure the bleed nipple loosens off. There's nothing worse than getting this whole bloody thing in place, then finding you can't undo the bleed nipple. As with the other cylinders on the front, they don't supply them with new nuts. I probably could reuse these, but I've got a big box of UNF, in this particular case, UNF, so I'll just fit new nuts on it to locate it into place. And that's it really. There's nothing particularly enormous about fitting this back plate up. I mean, 1.25 inches, 1.25. Just double check that the capacity on these things are 1.25 inches. They are the same. Otherwise I'd have to take this apart and just measure the internal diameters. You don't want to upset the braking balance, and obviously a larger capacity on this is going to lower the braking resistance because it will need more fluid to push the cylinders, the pistons out. Right, I'm going to get on with this and turn my radio back on again. Bye. I'll make sure I put the spring in first. Oh, and there's more joy. New springs do not go, regardless of how hard I've tried, do not go through the holes. Yeah, at all. Not even slightly. No chance. Old springs. Oh, hang about a minute. Are they a completely fucking different profile? You bet your ass they are. They're shorter. The end part is shorter in that it's still a struggle, but it goes in. And then we look at the bottom spring. So I've tried to put the bottom spring on, and again struggled with it. This is OE. That's... I'm pretty sure that they were blue bag of joy and wonderment. sake, that's going back then. I'll put the original springs on. There's not a lot wrong with them anyway. I've just given them a quick clean over. I don't know what to say. Oh, I probably shouldn't, should I? Anyway, you lot can fucking go back in there. So out of all the springs that I had on this thing, so there were 4 at the front, 4 at the back. I've been able to use 3. No, there's 5 there. Yeah, that's I've been able to use 3. If your springs are broken on your drums, then I think you come up with absolutely no choice but to take a grinder and just take the very, very, very nib off that return edge of the spring. So if we look at the original one that I've taken off here, we can see that when I overlay them, if I overlay them so you can actually see, you can see that one of them is about 1 millimetre, maybe 2 millimetres longer on the tip. So you can see the red dobble underneath it. And if we look at that's a front spring. If we look at the back lower spring, unfortunately they're both black, but you can see there's quite a radical difference between the OE and the new. Quite a radical difference. It needs a fair amount taking off that. I can't be asked to do that. I really don't need more fucking work. Britpark and your shonky supply chain. Right, I'm sure they've got a different supplier now. I'm sure that they, Anyway, a bit worried about putting these on. Okie doke. Right, let's get on with putting these springs on. So basically what I do is I line up all the springs in this sort of position and then stretch the shoes over the base plate. It's a lot easier to do it when it's on the bench like this. My phone is going berserk today. I don't know what is going on with it. Maybe the lens is the lens dirty? Oh, there might be a big fingerprint on it. There. Well, maybe it's a screen, I don't know. My phone's been packing up slowly but surely. Shouldn't use it in the workshop, should I? Passenger side back plate. Okay, so the brake pipe ferrule came out. You can see that's reasonably recent, which is weird because it had a steel pipe on it. That scuff there was me trying to get it out with the spanner when it was on. Oh no, sorry. Passenger side had a brass or copper pipe, so it's a copper pipe. So that explains why that's new. However, the bleed nipple just sheared off. I thought, oh, I'll get that out, see if it comes out. Doesn't look too bad. Hardly any effort, sheared off. So there you go. Right, I've already got the pads off this thing. That little dribble of oil down there was just after I undid all the bolts. So I don't think I need to particularly worry about that. Right, let's give them a quick clean up and put these new shoes back on. These are the old shoes. What I might do is just chamfer the edges because they've not been. I don't know if the new ones are chamfered. Let's have a look. Yes, they are. If you don't chamfer the leading edges on the shoes, then because these shoes can go either that way or that way, they chamfer both edges. If you don't chamfer the edges, then they can grab as the shoe collects the drum. Right, okay, that's fucked. So I can take that off. They're fucked. Well, they're not fucked, but I haven't got a pair that matches them, so they might as well go in the weigh-in pile. And yeah, oops, sorry, I just squeezed that bloody cylinder, didn't I? Silly arse. What a silly arse. And then when I put this thing back together again, I will make sure I'll just use the back of an envelope over there rather than the grubby bench. Right, a couple of nuts. We'll have this fella off. Clean up this face here. I didn't take the stub axle off on this side. This stub axle was looking fine. I don't know if it's more recent. It certainly doesn't have any rust on it that I've been able to identify. It's just dirt. So which probably explains why this side's not leaking and the other side was leaking because it's got rust on it. That's rust. It's where the In fact, that there is probably the root cause. That little tip right there, you can see there's a rusty tip that goes up through the sweep line where the seal attaches. Yeah, we're going to have to fix that. That'll be the root cause. Now it's dried off. I can see it clear as daylight, eh? Just goes to say, when you get an oil leak from a hub seal, you need to identify why it's leaking. It's pointless just putting another seal on, unless you know it's the seal that's the root cause. If it's the seat, it's just going to go again and again and again, and you're going to get through countless brake shoes getting contaminated with axle oil. Anyway, rant over. Putting this thing back together again. Get one side done at least. Farewell, faithful friend. My brake pipe flare is just broken. I mean, that must have done. Just trying to think now. Probably getting on for about 70, maybe 80 flares. There must be a fault. Poor thing. Never mind. Get another one. Right, does mean I can't make up the rest of the brake lines though. I've just made up one of the axle lines. I was about to make the other axle line up, and yeah, Mr. Flare is broken. Right, I'm going to have to order another one of those then. Gave this engine a bit of a service yesterday. Still no oil in there. I'm waiting for the oil to come in. It'll take anything pretty much from mineral 1540 upwards to 2050, I think is the maximum it will recommend. So 1540, 2050, readily available oils. Just didn't have any in at the moment. So I need to get that sorted out. I also need EP90 for the axles, so I'll just order the whole lot at the same time. I've got gallons and gallons and gallons of 8090. I've only got that much 90. I decided to take the thermostat off. Can't remember why I decided to take the thermostat off. Probably just to check it, really. Oh no, I took it off because I wanted to replace this stub pipe here that goes between here and here. And there's a gasket that goes. I'll show you that in a second. But basically, I wanted to replace that stub pipe because it looked pretty darned ancient. And I decided to, because of that, oh well, might as well have a look at the thermostat as well while we're up here. This bolt here, this one, that had seized in, so it's a blind bolt. In fact, is that housing cracked there? It might be cracked. I'll give that a proper good clean up, because if that's cracked, that might explain why I found the sheer amount of gloop and shit in here. Because there was quite a lot. Gaskets glued and all manner of crap. Yeah, that's mildly concerning. I'll be able to fix it, doesn't matter. Anyway, so what I found when I pulled the thermostat off, these things are quite clever the way they're put together. So you end up with this piece here, which is what the heater stub bypass connects onto that. If I can get my hands to work, there we are. So that goes on the engine like that, and then there's a short hose that goes between that stub there and the stub down at the bottom. And then on top of this is where the thermostat sits, and then on top of that you've got the thermostat top housing. So we pulled it all apart, and that came out, and I thought, that does not look like a Land Rover thermostat. It opens and closes quite happily, but it's definitely not a Land Rover thermostat. You can see there's been a lack of antifreeze in it as well. So the way these things normally go together, gaskets above and below this unit. The top gasket is different, two different part numbers. The bottom gasket just goes around this edge here. The reason the top gasket is different is because it needs to have this recess. It needs the central hole needs to be slightly larger. And the reason it needs to be slightly larger is because that is a Land Rover thermostat, 82 degrees. Give the heater a fighting chance. And they sit on like that, and then they go inside the top housing. So when you bolt them up, they really do kind of, press themselves in. Now, the other thing I found, when I was disassembling this top piece, because I know that there's an O-ring that needs to go in there and I wanted to replace it, that was the O-ring I managed to get out. This was also in there, wedged in with loads and loads and loads of glue and silicone and all sorts of other shit all around it. Now that, I believe, is the remnants of the old thermostat. I think it's that ring there. Quite how it had come to be disassembled, I'm not entirely sure I know. It's got a little bleed hole there as well. That's useful, isn't it? But because these things sit horizontally, it doesn't matter whether it's at the top or the bottom. Now, I've just had to order a couple of gaskets for this thing. I tend to keep them all in stock anyway. Usually, I should say. But on this particular case, I must have used them on my dad's car and not bothered replacing them. So I cleaned all these faces up here. That crack, I'm going to have another look at that in a second. And yeah, I've got everything I need now. But I just thought that go through the lengths that people sometimes go through to mess these things up. I don't know. Anyway, that will have gone in there like that, which is fine. It works, and a gasket would have gone over the top of it, and that would have clamped down, so it wouldn't have leaked at all. But the problem is that would have been slopping around in there like a dick in a bucket, and I think that's why all of this shit was wedged in there to hold the thermostat down, because otherwise the thermostat would have, if we take that out of there, put that on top. It's not going to really do any thermostat-y stuff, is it? So, lose all that stuff, put that in, Bob's your uncle. Right, let's go and have a look at this crack. But probably shouldn't do that, should I? That's bad. Right, let's get a drill. 1 second. Right, okay, just got a little wire cup. I want to clean up that face in there. Whoops. Behave yourself. And out here I want to clean up as well. And see if there's a real problem here. It looks like if there is going to be a crack, it will go down towards this housing here. Let me, I'm going to get the other knot wheel thing on there. Angle grind's going to be a bit too fierce for this, so I'll just use the drill bit. So you know, I can put that in there and I can tighten it up one-handed. Nice, these cordless Bosch drills. That's doing the trick. Can't see it going any further, which is good news. Let's get Mr. Torchy. Now we've cleaned most of that crap out of the way. Ah, yeah, it's been a bit of a balls ache this weekend because I ordered a load of bits to finish off the loom and they went to the wrong address and they haven't arrived. The replacement order hasn't arrived yet. I was making up the brake lines and my brake line machine broke. So I couldn't finish that. I was putting the steering together yesterday. You see the steering relay and everything's in there. And the steering arm that joins the two wheels, the track arm, whatever you want to call it, it's got a whacking great bend on the end here. Here. You see that? Now, normally I wouldn't worry too much about a bend on the steering arm because you can take it up with the the wind of the what's his name, the track rod ends. But because the bend is here, I can't get the thread in for the track arm. I'm not going to fuck around with it because that will make a useful beating stick. And they're 20 quid new, so sod it, I'll just do that. Right, let's have a look down here. So the crack, as you see, goes right across the top there. You can't see that because my torch is too bright. You can see it looks like a crack that goes through that thread. Now, this is the bolt that was seized. And I did put a little bit of heat on it. I can't see it going down the outside here. I think that's intact. This area here might just need a little bit more cleaning in there. Shame I haven't got my Dremel here. My Dremel's 200 miles away because the Dremel tool will get in there and I'll be able to clean that up beautifully. There may be a crack going down here at that sort of angle on this inside edge. but it won't go far, I'm sure. This is the problem, you see, that happens when people put their cars away and don't bother putting any antifreeze in them. Wasn't me, promise. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the temperature sender out, which is that bit there, and it sits on a nice big housing, which is that bit there. I'll take those two out and see what we've got. Otherwise, it might be a case of running a grinder down there. These are cast, and they're a bastard to weld if you have to. Oh, let's hope it's not a blinking failure. They're not hugely high pressure, these systems. So the cooling system is probably about £12, I think. I don't think I've ever had a hard hose on Dad's car, top hose. It's probably because it's got a leak in the rad somewhere above the waterline. And so it tends to just expand into the atmosphere and then obviously contract back into the atmosphere because there's a reasonable head of water at the top of the engine, and he's lucky if he does 20 miles a week in it. It doesn't really make a huge amount of difference. But that does look glaringly obvious there, doesn't it? You can actually see there's a break in the thread inside there, isn't there? It might just be the top part of the thread. But can we see in there? Let's get the torch again. It's actually quite useful using the phone to... No, what I thought was the crag, that black mark there is actually not the crag. So sometimes the phone is really useful for getting in close. It's like a giant magnifying glass. My top tip for the day. If you can't read something, get your phone out. I don't think there's any crack there at all. I think it's literally just across the surface, in which case I can probably polish that. Just, it's odd how... No, I can't see anything there at all. I mean, the phone's about 2 inches above it at the moment, so I can't get any closer because it's not able to focus. I don't think. No, it's not able to focus. So that's as close as I can get it with it focusing. I can take a picture, of course, and I can zoom in on the picture. That's another way of doing it. Let me just grab a picture of that. Right, I've been over it with a fine-tooth comb. Fine-tooth comb, what a stupid word that is. Right, let me get a pen, will do the job. So basically what we've got, you can see the crack that runs along the top of the facing here for the thermostat. It runs either side of that bolt hole. And then if I go down here, it runs like that, down for about 4 or 5 mil. It runs down, okay? Not far. On this side, here, so there's the crack there, and it runs down here. Again, no real distance. It doesn't go, I don't believe it goes onto this flange panar here, and if it does, it certainly doesn't run through that flange, and this is the flange, I'm going to say it again, where the temperature sender goes in. I think what's happened here, if I were to be honest, is that some gibbon has put the wrong size bolt in there. And they've stretched the machine. So I'm going to clean that tap out and check the bolt fits. I'm going to reinstall the cooling system as it is. I'm going to use normal gasket. I'll use a normal silicone gasket sealer on this, and I will observe. And if I find that that is leaking, then I'll look at the next option. I'm not going to take this cylinder head off just for this tiny little crack here, which I believe only goes down 3 or 4 mil, and because the threaded hole goes down a similar sort of depth, I suspect that it is some gibbon has been at work here. So what I'm going to need to do is make a bottom tap, because all my taps are first taps that go through open holes. This is obviously a blind hole, and I need to clean that thread hole out. So yeah, disappointing, but I don't think it's a disaster. Okie doke. There's the old smiley face. Okie Dokie. Right, so what are we going to actually do today? I've treated the rust on the chassis top. It's come up really nicely. Nothing serious up here at all. All looks really good. Like I say, the relay went in nicely. Steering's in. Nice. Couldn't do the second steering arm because. Doors are in. Nice. Dash is all going in. I want to check all the electrics. In fact, I might even do that today. I was hoping to be able to bind the loom, because I unwrapped the loom to pull out that broken wire for the screen wash. Old screen washers went in as well, so new screen washers have gone in. Fine, aren't they? What am I actually going to do today, though? What am I going to do? I don't know. I'll do something. I'm definitely going to do something. Oh, the other thing I could do, we've got the stub axle there with the built-up rake back plate with the new shoes and everything, all the lock plate, blah, 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 blah. It's all there waiting patiently, something over there. However, I'm going to need to split that seal or ring off the stub axle. Now I've given it a real good clean, you can see where the join is on it. You can see that it is separate from the stub axle, so I'll get that off. It saves me a lot of money. I'm getting that stub axle back into one piece. So I can do that. I can paint the top of the chassis, I suppose. I've got some nice Dinitrol stuff I had in the cupboard. Here we are. That's what I was planning on spraying the front end of the chassis with. The rest of the chassis has actually got quite a thick coating on it, but for some reason the front is quite sparse of the stuff. That said, when I was going over it, there really wasn't that much rust on it. You can see there's a lot of paint on here still. Some of this is green. There's big chunks of it that are blue. So I guess when they welded the dumb arm extensions on, they probably painted the dumb arms, or the front spring hangers, and the cross member, which is original to the chassis. They painted it all at the same time. And then the further back you go on the chassis, the more blue the chassis kind of shows up. So I don't know. Right, well, I'm happy enough with that now. Just need to order the gaskets. It's a nice day, though. It is a nice day. Quiet. Apart from the birdies. Trees are coming out. Gates wide open for some reason. I must have been through there. Good job I haven't got the horses in the field now. They're up at the pub. Landlord was sitting outside the front of his pub the other day. This is the pub I go to, or have been up to, up at Exmoor. It's not open because of lockdown. But he was sitting outside his pub. Helicopter was circling around above, and then 2 police cars turned up to check that he wasn't open. And he wasn't. Still. People are being sensible around here at least. Oh, I know what else I could do. I could actually sort this heater box and everything out. So let's go and get... Because I started doing this yesterday. Now, I found a replacement Smith's motor, second-hand, used, for a Series 3 snail box thing. So I'll get him out. Pause while I get this thing open. Here we go. Right, so the snail shell, what I'm going to do with this, I've decided, I've treated the rust on it. I am going to cut a strip of steel, make it into roughly the right sort of shape around the outside. I'm going to arrow dike the fucker on there. I'm not going to bother welding near this because it's just going to, I'm not going to be able to seam weld it, and I'm just going to make a complete and utter mess of it if I'm not careful. However, the good news is that the motor I took out of this side, the burnt out motor, I told you it was a standard Smith's item. Pretty much every single MGB had one. And there is a world of MGB second-hand Smith's motors. So get the motor, make sure you get the fan with it and the seat that it sits on. So I'll be able to report back in more detail, but effectively what you're looking for is something that arrives looking like that, but all riveted together. So you buy the complete thing. You don't need to unrivet it. You don't need to take it apart. You don't need to do anything with it as long as the brushes are all right in there. And that's what you buy. So you can buy the motors new. There's various Land Rover dealers sell them, £100 and something. And you can buy the fans new. Various Land Rover dealers sell them at £20 plus shipping, plus VAT, plus whatever. Or you could buy a second-hand part off eBay from an MGB for 25 quid. And that's what I've gone for. And I shall pop that in. However, all this lot needs painted. So what I did yesterday was I de-rusted the heater matrix box and the cover, which these things often rot out, completely rot out. This has only started to rot out. So I treated the rust in there, give it an epoxy coat on the inside, zinc prime first of all, epoxy coat on the inside, and then that can be refitted to the dashboard. I think the heater box itself is going to be alright. That'll look okay. Give it a quick lick of paint, bish bash, shove it in. But right, I'm going to crack on with this thing now. Enough talking to you fine people. Got him off, exactly as per the manual. Drill a couple of holes in there. You can feel when the drill bit starts to touch the surface. Okay, you can feel the hardened surface. The foot is a lot harder than that bit there, but the new seat will go over the top. Needs to be pressed in place. Give it a hearty good tap with a cold chisel and a £3 hammer, and you can see it's kind of deformed it enough that it's just going to lift straight off. Then all it was then was a case of using a chisel, and it fell off. No. So it's only really kind of like, you know, because it's like been drilled now, it slides on and off quite easily. But I'm expecting a new one, maybe a more of a challenge to press on. But that's good because I can recover that. This, however, I think is a shade too far. You can skim these discs, these drums. You can skim them. It needs some specialist kit. It's got lumps missing off around the dirt dust seal all around the inside. It needs a hearty good clean. And in all honesty, I'm just going to replace the bloody thing. The other drum is fine. Now let's look. I'm just going through braking system here because it gives me the maximum, the minimum distance. So we're looking at 11-inch diameter drums. So the drum regrinding limit, as for 10-inch drums, that's fucking useful. Why don't they just write it, drum regrinding limit? So you can only take 30 thou off these drums. That's not a lot, is it? I mean, I should imagine it would take this surface out, but I don't know if that's been done before on this. So we've got now the thickness, 4.75 mil. I suppose I could check the thickness of it. So the width, lining, thickness, 4.75 mil. I don't know what the lining is going to be on this. I'm just going to get a new drum. It's not worth fucking around with it. It really isn't. And it's still soaked in oil, as you can see. I gave it a quick gunk off, but I couldn't be bothered to take it any further. So, decided, new drum. I'll order it when I order the other bits anyway, because I need to order one of these for the seal, orf. And then I'll demonstrate how to put that back on. That was quite loud. Sorry about that, chaps. Right, okay, I'm going to get on with this car.